Going to this need to focus in on generative AI, the opportunity by a company like Intel, is it still all about AI? Are we able to focus on the long-term opportunity when you've got headlines just now from Trump saying, well, that the US will have a fair deal with China?
Yeah, look, AI is the next revolution that we have to chase. So it is important that Intel fixes its house. But, I think Intel has kind of lost the game on AI. What they have to figure out is if they can hold the kind of prowess on manufacturing and catch up with TSMC, because that becomes a more strategic imperative than being able to develop a competing AI chip to NVIDIA.
How I saw manufacturing that was meant to be coming more to home, Ohio, for example, that then gets pushed back because of current quandaries about whether there's going to be government support for the CHIPS Act anymore, whether there's going to be money coming from the government. How is Intel or any chip maker currently to navigate whether they invest in the US or not?
Well, definitively, we need to invest in the U.S. I think the administration has made it very clear. I think it is a necessity that we start investing in the U.S. So I am completely on board with that. I don't actually think that the lack of CHIP Act funding is the reason that Intel is not investing in the U.S. I believe that they've actually lost the benefit of being first. And they are struggling with going from one node to the next. We'll see where they are on 18A, which is the next node. But as of right now, they're still outsourcing to Taiwan Semi, which shows you that, in fact, TSM has taken the lead on these last few nodes.
And we will find out more Thursday evening when Intel posts numbers. I think they'll have to answer a lot of those questions. Earnings is so interesting, right, in the context of everything happening around the world. I want to bring up this chart, which is average EPS surprise. And we're still kind of rattling our brains a little bit, Ankur, about the Tesla share performance in this session relative to the numbers it posted. And the reason I like this chart, I find it so interesting, is that actually Tesla has a terrible track record compared to the other Mag 7 names in positive surprise on EPS. That's all to say, do you think that given the macro environment right now, all of these names might get a bit of a pass this quarter?
Yeah, I think sentiment has gotten so dire that many of these companies are putting up okay numbers. Like you look at iSurge yesterday in healthcare space, the numbers were okay. However, it was better than expected. Tesla, the same way. The numbers were okay, but they talked about, I think, some of their growth drivers, which are humanoids. They talked about how they're going to have autonomy by the end of this year. I think he said millions of vehicles by the second half of this year. And even if it's not second half of this year, as long as there's a roadmap to true autonomy, I think that's what's going to drive the next leg in Tesla, not necessarily the margins on the auto side.
They also pulled guidance. Do you expect that to be a move elsewhere in the Mag 7 names?
I think that we could get many companies not actually giving any guidance because the uncertainty is high. So if you're a CFO or a CEO trying to navigate this market, you really have a hard time right now because, what do you guide to? Do you guide to 145% tariff or 40% tariff from China? Do you guide to, and what you're seeing today, for example, in Vertiv basically has assumed, or in iSurge have assumed, full tariff impact. So, iSurge last night, the CFO said 145% tariff is what they have included in their guidance and have guided that way, and just in order to buffer any kind of impact on their earnings.
You say it's difficult for a CEO, a CFO to navigate. Boy, is it also difficult for you, an investor.
Oh, for sure.
So do you remain committed in the longer term? Do you stick to the longer-term narratives that have driven these stocks higher over the last couple of years, or do you pause, do you take money out?
So I think if you haven't taken your money out already and protected yourself, now is not the time to do it. So that's the first thing. Secondly, by September, I will go out on a limb and say by September we are no longer going to be talking about these trade wars, and we will have moved on to something else, and maybe we'll be looking at the midterms and how great the economy is doing, but it won't be the trade wars. So I think this is a kind of a short-term focus geopolitically to play a game that the U.S. The administration is currently playing. However, it will be behind us shortly. As we move forward, the AI trade is still very, very prevalent. And there's no escaping it. That train has left the station. So, yes, we will start again. And, right now there's some very compelling opportunities in the market.
Should America's biggest technology companies prepare for a recession?
Tough to tell, and I think it's a binary answer, and in part because the policies are going to dictate if we go into a recession. So, if we do have a 145% tariff and we keep ratcheting up these tariffs on foreign goods, and we have a retaliatory effect, yes, we are going to go into a recession, and I would say that there would like 90-some% probability that would happen. If we can thread the needle and not be quite as aggressive, the situation changes, and maybe we have a bit of a soft landing at 1% GDP growth instead of negative GDP growth.